Hello, hello. This is Stephanie from Our Natural Wisdom. Thank you so much for joining. Great to have you here for another 15 minutes of soulful gardening wisdom. And I'm just going to give it a moment to let a couple of people join. Thanks for catching the replay. It's a beautiful day here. So nice to be outside in the garden sharing some wisdom with you. So I'm just going to jump right on into it. So first of all, I encourage you, invite you to just take some nice deep breaths. Settle into your heart. Know that you are heart-led. You have been led here, guided here to gain some wisdom, some practical and mystical wisdom about gardening that will serve you in so many beautiful ways to ease your anxiety and enhance your intuition and help bring healing to Mother Earth. All right, so today's little bit of soulful gardening wisdom is about pruning. And pruning, flowering shrubs in particular, can be kind of mysterious for a lot of people and feel just too confusing. So a lot of gardeners, a lot of people who have flowering shrubs just choose either not to prune them at all or to prune them inappropriately. And this is simply because there's some basic and not always readily shared wisdom about when and how to prune flowering shrubs so that they are vibrant and bringing beauty to your home, to your landscape, bringing beauty to all of nature that is around you. And today I wanted to share some really practical wisdom as well as some mystical wisdom and a mindfulness practice that you can do when pruning flowering shrubs. So the first thing to know is that timing is everything when it comes to pruning flowering shrubs. Hi there. Hi, Kay. Great to see you here. Thanks for joining, talking about pruning flowering shrubs and how the very first thing to know is that timing is critical, okay? And the magic date is June 15th. Now, of course, it could be a little bit earlier or a little bit later, but we're going to say June 15th for the sake of making things easy. So if you have shrubs that flower before June 15th, they flower on old wood, okay? These are the shrubs that need to be pruned immediately after their flowers have spent, immediately after all of the flowers have died back. They flower in the spring. They are flowering on what is called old wood, and I'm going to explain that in a moment, and they need to be pruned in the spring, okay? If they flower before June 15th, you want to prune them in the spring after they have finished flowering. All right, if they bloom after June 15th, these are plants that are considered to bloom on new wood, and they can be pruned later in the year. Fall, winter, early spring is when the flowers the shrubs that bloom after June 15th, they need to be pruned late in the year. It can even be in the middle of the winter. You can prune flowering shrubs that bloom after June 15th. All right? Now, that is probably the most important thing to know is that magical date of June 15th, whether it flowers before or after. That will help you determine whether your plants flower on old wood, which is before June 15th, or on new wood, which is after June 15th. Okay, so I'm just going to share a couple of, so spring bloomers, plants that bloom on that old wood are things like viburnum, lilac, azalea, some hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are a little bit tricky. Ninebark, witch alder, and meadowsweet. Those all bloom on old wood in the spring. Okay, they are the ones that need to be pruned immediately after their flowers are spent. So you prune them in the spring. The flowering shrubs that flower after June 15th on new wood are things like roses, butterfly bush, spirea, and some hydrangeas, which I will say right off the bat include panicle hydrangea, smooth hydrangea, and bracted hydrangea. Those bloom on new wood after June 15th, and these are the plants that you prune late in the year, in the fall, in the winter, or in the very early spring of the following year. Okay, so that's about the timing. So important. So many people prune at the wrong time. And the thing to know that is so important is that if you have, let's say, a lilac bush. We have a huge lilac hedge. It is not native, of course, but we have kept it, even though we've transitioned most of our gardens to native plants. But we have kept it because it's quite large. It's about, I think it's like 20 plants, and it's old. It's over 50 years old. When we first moved to our home, we were pruning it completely wrong. We were pruning it at the wrong time of year, and when you prune spring flowering shrubs late in the year, you are cutting off all of their flowers, because they begin setting their flowers very soon after their flowers die back. So that's why it's critical to prune them right after their flowers die back. All right, that's really important to know. And also in terms of how you prune, a lot of people think that pruning just means like shaving off the very top or just clipping off the very top so that it's more rounded or more rectangular or whatever look you're going for. There are different methods of pruning, and in some cases you do just want to clip off the spent flowers. With some plants you may have to look that up for your specific plant, but with a lot of the spring bloomers, the shrubs that bloom on old wood, you want to do what is called renewal pruning, which is where you take off the thickest stems at the very base of the plant. You want to take off the entire old stem, because as these plants age, their flowers become smaller and less abundant on older and older wood, meaning 3, 4, 5-year-old wood is not going to produce the kinds of flowers that most of us want to see on our flowering shrubs. Now, that's called renewal pruning. So you could prune as much as a third of the plant. If there are that many thick stems that are ready to come off, you can take them right down to the ground. This is benefiting the plant in so many ways, because it's rejuvenating the growth from the ground, and it's sparking more growth from the tips of the stems that are still there. So the stems that are 1, 2, maybe 3 years old, they're going to be setting on an abundance of flower sets for the next year. So that's how you would prune a spring flowering plant, okay, is through renewal pruning. But the plants that bloom later in the year, after June 15th, the plants that are blooming through the summer and perhaps in the fall, these are the ones that you prune late in the year. So you prune them in the fall, late fall, maybe even the middle of the winter or the very earliest of spring. These are plants that you can practice what's called rejuvenation pruning, which is taking everything down to like maybe 6 to 8 inches high, if you want to really bring back an abundance of flowers. You can vary it. You can choose not to prune that extensively. You can prune just to a lower range within the plant so that you're sparking more growth from around the entire plant. So you can really have the opportunity to shape how the plant, the structure of the plant appears in the next year. So those are some really basics on pruning, practical gardening guidance on pruning. Now, in terms of how this applies to our mindset and the mystical connection that we have with pruning, we, as I mentioned earlier, so many gardeners or people that have flowering shrubs that may not consider themselves a gardener, They think that pruning will hurt a plant, that it will damage a plant. And if it's done at the wrong time or in the wrong way, it potentially could, but now you know the right time and the right way, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Pruning sparks growth. Pruning provides a signal to grow from the roots, to grow from the ground, and to grow from the tips that are still abundant and vibrant. And this is such a beautiful thing for you to think about when you are connecting with your flowering shrubs. Because just like plants benefit from pruning, and just as they can have much more abundant flowers and blooms and just bring so much more beauty and joy to your garden as you prune them, you also have the ability to prune your thoughts, to prune self-limiting beliefs, self-limiting thoughts, things that are no longer serving you. So as you think about pruning these beautiful flowering shrubs of yours, think also about how being very diligent about your thinking and about what thoughts are no longer serving you, and to actively, intentionally, and with awareness, release those. You can release those thoughts. There's so many different approaches to do this, but just for simplicity's sake, I encourage you to literally imagine yourself pruning these thoughts out of your awareness. You can prune them at the ground level. You can take them down just a little bit lower than, to take them maybe to the half of the stem. Maybe it's a thought that you just want to ratchet back because it feels heavy and you want to lighten it up a little bit. Think of how you have the ability to prune your thinking. Okay? This is so possible and attainable for you. It is all about your mindset and being mindful about this. You have the ability to do this. You have the ability to set this intention for yourself. And as you visualize it in different ways, especially in connecting with nature, this will benefit you so much because you will begin to connect with all of the growth that pruning provides you. All of the new flowers that pruning provides you. How pruning is an act of, it's a life-affirming act. It is the ability for you to transform your thinking and to spark a growth mindset, to really embrace that for yourself. Thank you, Kay. Yes, it's a great metaphor, isn't it? When we first moved to our home and found this hedge, we didn't know that it was lilacs. It hadn't bloomed when we were here, so we didn't know what it was, and we were pruning it all wrong. And when I started looking at it, I realized it was a lilac hedge, and we're like, oh boy, we need to figure out how to prune this thing. But it had also been pruned incorrectly for a long time because all of the stems, they came up and then they branched and branched and branched and branched and branched and branched and branched, but they were all in a very small amount of space. There was not a lot of growth available here. There was not expansion and spaciousness, and there were no flowers. It was all very constrained and tightly woven together, and it really was such an amazing visual for me about how our thoughts can be the same way. How when we allow ourselves to ruminate with a particular thought that's no longer serving us, things get really dense and constricted and woven together and difficult to parse out and lacking spaciousness. And this is what would bring you so much just a sense of expansion to connect with this visual as you are doing your pruning or visualizing pruning as you are intentionally aware of your thoughts that are no longer serving you. So that's today's Soulful Gardening lesson. And I also want to invite you, if you have not yet, to consider enrolling in my new 30-day online course, Soulful Gardening with Nature. Today is the final day to sign up for the June series. We're going to kick it off on June 8th with our first of 3 modules. This course is all about how to ease anxiety, enhance your intuition, and bring healing to Mother Earth through creating a vibrant native flower garden. This is going to be such a wonderful opportunity to learn all of the essentials to bring a garden that is a sanctuary and a truly sacred space for you right to your home. So I encourage you to click the link in my bio on Instagram or the link that I'll provide on Facebook and check it out. Today is the last day to enroll. Today, June 2nd, is the last day to enroll, and it would be such a joy to see you there. It's going to provide such essential wisdom, both practical and mystical, for you to have a soulful garden with nature. Thanks so much for joining, everybody, and I'll see you again soon. All right? Take care. Bye-bye.